sorry. It is now 7 p.m., so I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Chris Brown?
Here.
Rob Cruz?
Present.
Amy Grantham? Amy, I'm marking you here since you are on Zoom. Nancy Hopper?
Present.
Katie Jess?
Here.
John Proudy? Melissa Smith?
Present. Could you all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, up next, we have the approval of the previous minutes. You have in front of you the minutes from June 5th, 23. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve is written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? There's actually a typo on there.
Would you?
Coulter bump is spelled Colton
Thank
on the
you.
minutes.
I will make that correction.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second, but we have a correction. Can we approve the minutes?
I'll amend my motion to include your correction.
And I second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Chris Brown?
Aye.
Rob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham? Nancy Hopper?
Yes.
Katie Jess? Aye. Melissa Smith?
Aye.
Aye.
Next up, we have the agenda in front of you. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown?
Aye.
Rob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham? Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
Melissa Smith?
Aye. Next is a special presentation. We have a 23-24 budget. Ms. Tony Miller, you're up.
All right, so some of you may or may not have a chance to review this because I emailed it to you. So I'm just going to go over the highlights of what went into the budget preparation. We did raise the base teacher salary to $48,000. We have IT upgrades going over the next 3 years, which include putting interactive TVs in the classrooms. The usual budgeted $519,000 for cap reserve per board policy. We do budget for full employment. It has not happened too often, but it could. We calculated a modest inflationary increase between 6% and 8% for purchased goods. And we budgeted for the addition of 2 buses this year. We were going to buy one this current year and next year, and it just didn't happen last year. So that is in this year's. Looking at a few things, page 1, the real page 1, Bev. I think everyone was as excited as I was about the graphs. It just, the first one is the revenues, and it shows the breakdown of where they're coming from, state versus federal. And then the expenditures by program is new this year. I think that's very informative to see how much we're spending on classroom, maintenance, those things. And so pages 9 to 24 are the individual statements for each of those programs. And at the top, it'll tell you what that program is designed to do. And then the last graph is how we in the past have presented the budget, breaking it out between salaries, benefits, purchase services, and the other categories that are presented there. I liked the graph on page 2, just kind of to give us an overall picture of what's happening with student enrollment. Clearly the one where it went down was COVID, and now it's crawling back up. We never really know what's going to happen, so I always budget for a flat, stays the same next year for budgeting for student money. Looking at page 3, this is the overall budget at a glance. It shows the total revenues for the general fund being $40.1 million. Adding in the beginning fund balance of $12.1 million, the resources available are $52,366,920. The budgeted expenditures as listed here are $40,909,000, requiring that we spend part of the beginning fund balance of $728,826. So that and some of the other funds where we do have some spend down will require a resolution when you get to the action items. If you look at page 4, which is labeled page 1, we found that today. That's a breakdown of all the revenues and where they come from for the local sources, state revenue and federal. And then on the very bottom section down there, you can see the allocations that the general fund has to make for insurance, preschool, daycare, and the cap reserve that I spoke about. Page 5, 6, 7, and 8 are those programs listed, and it breaks each program down into the categories of salaries, benefits, professional services, property, supplies. And then we have a 3-year comparison for the past 3 years audit-wise. And then our proposed budget for 23-24. That first column is where we're at already this year for 22-23. We don't have final numbers, obviously. And then, so each of these will have their own page that you can follow through on pages 9 through 24. The other thing, if we can just look at Bev, page 9, there's a section on the bottom for FTE, which shows you how many actual people are employed in this particular program. Next year, I'll be able to have the prior year's numbers in there as well, just for comparison. I think it's a useful number just to see where our people are working and what they're doing. Okay, then moving on to mill levy, which is page 25. Mill levy, the revenues come from property taxes, and we have a pretty broad definition of where we could spend those funds. It's right around $5.5 or $550,000 a year, and I budgeted for us to spend down some of that beginning balance because it really is intended to be spent in that fiscal year for the upkeep of the district. So doing that, I'm budgeting for a deficit in the mill levy for $491,000, leaving a fund balance of $25,000 at the end. That's pretty aggressive. I don't know that we'll get that all spent, but the idea is to spend it in the year that we collect it, just for the benefit of the schools. Looking at the daycare fund on page 26, pretty much a flat, a little surplus of $2,000. I believe we are planning to transfer some money from general fund. They tend to run a little bit short, so we may be looking at some rearranging how that's done over there. Let's see. I know Esther's also looking at raising her fees because it's quite a bit below what the other people in town are charging. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but we are looking at that as another source of revenue for that one. Looking at cap reserve on page 27, we have a beginning fund balance of $261,000 with a current allocation of $519,000. And then I proposed to spend $560,000, which we would be spending $41,000 of that beginning balance, just to kind of get that spent down, because once again, that allocation is for that current year with the intention of spending all that on capital items for the district. Looking at page 28, the insurance fund, I believe from the estimates of the invoices I've looked at that the expenditures for insurance is going to be less than what we budgeted for. He had told me originally what he thought percentage-wise it would go up, and that's what I based this figure on. But I think when the policies come in, it's going to be less than that. So that's always good. I always budget this pretty close to zero because it's not a money-making fund. It's just, and it is one that we're thinking about putting into the general fund as part of the general fund and not having its own fund because it has like 5 transactions a year. So, you know. Preschool fund on page 29. This is the one that's kind of funky because we used to get funded through CDE with our pupil count, and now CDE has got it going through some other, yeah. So anyway, they've guaranteed that this year will be a hold harmless year, so we'll get at least what we got the previous year. There's a lot of miscommunication in the new department as to how things are going to work, so it's kind of, I don't know, we're just waiting to see what's going to happen with that.
What percentage are preschoolers funded? I mean, is it like a full amount or is it a partial amount? Do you know? I would think it's full.
It's supposed to be on FTE, which would be they'll take 2 half-time student equal 1.
That's what I thought.
So that's how
it's
they
like
do
half
that.
on kid, okay.
Yeah, and so they have a calculation to figure that out, and that's how
So 200
use
kids,
when
they get
come up
paid
with the whole
100.
people, adding the 2 together, that's how they come up with the funding. Fund 22 is our grant fund. It is a zero balance fund. Whatever we get in with grants, we spend. If we have money left over at the end of the year, those funds are deferred to the next year unless the grant doesn't allow. And so this is what we're estimating to have come in. I work with Dee Dee and Rena on this, just trying to get an estimate of what's still a valid program. Looking at page 31, that's our food services. As we discussed previously, the state required us to have a spend down and not carry such a high fund balance. So I am budgeting a deficit of $367,000, which will get that fund balance within the confines of where CDE wants it to be. We did do a little of the spending in this current budget year, but a lot of it's going to land next year as well. And Fund 23 is another one. It's just pupil activity funds. They raise the money, they spend it on programs and different clubs. So I try to budget that as close to zero as we can. They rarely spend everything, but we're really doing some work in our department to try to get a better handle on it and get more information to the schools to see which clubs have what money. It got a little muddy before Penny and I started working with it, so she's got that pretty well cleaned up, and we're going to work with them. And some of the clubs that have money aren't even in force anymore. So we want to look at that, and if the money's not there, reallocate it or just figure out a good use for the money. Page 33, bond redemption. I love this fund because you get property taxes coming in, you know what the payments going out are going to be. The one thing that is a big difference this year is our interest income is quite a bit higher than in the previous years. In 21-22, it was only 8, and I'm looking at 50 as a conservative number for interest income for bonds. And building fund, that is page 34. I think we're going to see some action in that fund this year. The income, that $2.6 million at the top, that is our expected best grant match for the work that we're planning to do in the district. And then the expenditures down below, I have expenditures in there for the HVAC system and for Legion Field. So the beginning balance, you'll notice, is $9.3 million. All the bond money is sitting in there for Legion Field. So we want to start spending that down, which is why we have a deficit of $3.5 million. So because we want to get going on Legion Field, we've got some good plans going, and I think that they've got some things in the works to get moving on that. So that's exciting. And then page 35, private purpose fund is just scholarships. So we get donations and then they try to hand them out to kids. It's been kind of frustrating, I think, for the high school because they have scholarships and no one applies. And they actually have to go out and say, please apply for this scholarship. And they've had scholarships that nobody applied for and they just didn't get applied for. So do you have any questions on what I presented so far? When we get to the action items, you'll have 2 resolutions. One is approving the amount of expenditures that we went through in each fund. And the other one is approving spending beginning fund balances as was listed on there as well. Okay, that's the end of my special presentation for you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Miller?
No.
That was great, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Tony.
Yep.
Next up, we have the opportunity for the audience. I know we have some representatives from FMEA.
Good evening. We thought we'd come as an executive board from FMEA. I'm Kyle Graulis, the FMEA president. Regarding the CEA Resolution 3, Economic Equity, FMEA would like to address the board tonight before your later discussion on this topic. FMEA as a body does not support or endorse every resolution that comes from CEA or NEA. Resolutions are simply belief statements that require no action. And it should be known that this resolution passed at Delegate Assembly by a narrow majority. This reflects a small majority of CEA's beliefs, not necessarily FMEA's. FMEA respects all our members' individual opinions. FMEA values our good relationship with the board and our greater community and would like to see this topic put to rest. Our partnership should be about the students, teachers, and the community, not political ideology. Okay. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment as well? Said it all.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, next we have reports. Does anyone have a board report?
I don't have a report, but just a reminder.
I did, but I do.
August 28th, just a reminder, is Region 1 meeting, the Region 1 meeting for Cassidy, and I think it's in Marino this year.
It is in the-
Yes, it is in
Yeah,
Marino.
so just, it's a long ways away, but August 28th,
I think you can register for it.
you can go ahead
I just
and,
got an email just 2 days ago.
well, you're behind the ball, get registered.
Does anyone else have a report? Because I do. So, this is Dr. Childress' last day with us as a board meeting. So we'll send that with you, and thank you for your 3 years of great work.
Appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, always is when you make a new move. But at least you'll be closer to home, that's gotta be good. Okay, next up, Mr. Sanders, Superintendent
Yes,
Report.
just a couple of things I didn't get on here because I've just, well, been working with Brett trying to get our retreat scheduled. He was in South Carolina last week, I was gone this week, so he'll be back, well, we'll be in contact tomorrow. To get some more dates, and we'll send out another doodle poll, see if we can get something put together, because I'd sure like a date where we can all meet, we can all talk and spend some time together, so that'll be coming out. I think that was it. Oh, the policy on working for a spouse, we pulled tonight.
GBEA.
So we pulled that tonight, it's not in the, shouldn't, did we
Well,
pull it tonight? Yeah, we
we're good.
pulled it from the package.
It's not yet, but we'll talk, yeah.
We'll visit about it another time.
Okay.
Yeah, just let me know when I was on.
So what happened with that first doodle poll? What was the issue?
Well, we had several days where there were only 5 people who could make it.
No, I mean the poll
Oh,
itself.
So when I put it in there, I put your email addresses in, you got it,
Yeah,
but nobody else got it. And I'm not
Come.
sure why, and then I'm glad I went back in and checked, because I didn't see any other responses, so I thought, well, I better start asking some questions. And so as soon as this time I'll learn that I'm going to actually just cut and paste the shortcut, rather than have the doodle poll send you an individual email. So that way I'll send you, it'll come personally from me rather than from Google.
okay.
So,
Okay, is
technology.
that it?
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So next is Assistant Superintendent. Rena's not here, we don't have any report. Okay. Next up, we have Chief Financial Officer. Anything else, Ms. Miller?
Okay, we have some resolutions that are all related to our change of banks. The first one, we had to order actual checks for the high school for the scholarship fund and the Impress accounts. They like to have actual checks on hand. And Clint and Amber Von Felt are the signers, so we have to do a resolution saying it's okay to add them as signers. So that'll be one of them. Then the last piece that we've been trying to get done is getting the bond account moved from Wells Fargo over to a new bank. I was working with Nate Eckloff from Butler Snow, he's my bond guy, and he recommended a fellow from this BOK Financial to facilitate this. So we have a resolution changing from Wells Fargo to BOK Financial. That's the first one. Then there's a resolution saying that BOK is going to be the holder of our bond money and to be in charge of investing that. And then the last one says that they will be facilitating actual bond payments when they're due, bond and interest. So those will all come up when you get to your action items, just some information on those. It should be the last piece of things we have to change. I'm excited to get the bond money out of Wells Fargo.
Write that down, there should be. Just saying.
I should have said that with a straight face.
I know it seems like you guys are signing forms every single meeting, but we're close.
Good. All right, any other questions for Tony? All right, moving on to our Human Resource Director, our last report from Dr. Childress.
No, thank you. I asked Bev to share some of the exit data, exit survey data that we did this year. Just, we pushed pretty hard on folks to make sure that we got reasons why they were stepping out away from us, because we know that the switch from a 5-day week to a 4-day week is something we're really paying attention to, and we want to see, hopefully, that has a positive impact, not a negative impact on folks. We had 31 responses. I did have about 5 classified staff kind of sneak in and put their information in there as well. And I left that in there just so you could see what the responses were. But of those 31 responses, there were 5 folks in that pack who said, yeah, the 5-day week was something that they weren't in favor of, that they were making plans to do something else because of that. That's, I think we could dig into that a little bit further and we could have a deeper conversation about that. I think bigger is sort of some of the trends that we're seeing now that we've made the move to a 4-day week and made the move to increase salaries. And so what the exit survey doesn't show is what we're getting back in terms of, we had 3 folks resign, and then right after they resigned and we made a couple of switches in salary, they said, hey, can we come back? That's great. So we were able to get 3 people back out of that group who had resigned. We did get 3 elementary folks from Brush and 1 SPED person from Brush coming over, which we never wish ill things on our fellow districts, but if we can get good people and give them an opportunity to be successful in our system, that's not a bad thing. We got a couple of middle school folks coming from Saguache because of the work that we're doing in the 4-day week realm and the salary realm. We got a couple folks from Fleming coming to join us. We got a couple people from Weldona coming back, who spent a year in Weldona and now are coming back. So I think that picture is important to keep in front of us, as well as just the overall numbers this year are less than last year, right? Last year we had 53 teachers step out. This year we're seeing closer to 40. And those are all steps in the right direction. So I think, I'm knock on wood, the changes that we pushed on to see happen here pretty quickly, hopefully quickly we'll have some positive results for us.
So,
Please, yeah.
so we think as far as people resigning, that's pretty much over. We've kind of passed that. There may be a 1 or 2 here or there, but for the most part, those that were going to resign and leave have done so.
Again, knocking on wood, yes.
Okay.
And so principals, feedback I'm getting from principals is they think their staffs have stabilized. The other thing that I forgot to mention just a second earlier, we're about done with hiring,
Okay, that was
which
my next
is different, right? So the last 2 years, we've been hiring right up to the start of school. And we really have onesie-twosies left. One at the high school, couple special ed specialists, special service providers, that if we could get those folks in, that'd be great. If not, we would look to contract that work out with some of the contracting agencies. But much better situation this year, hiring-wise, than last year.
Okay. And the report that you alluded to,
Mhm.
I'm assuming at some point we'll get a copy of that as a board?
I hoped, did you post?
It isn't on there?
So Bev will post it to you.
Perfect, that's fine. Just because I'm better looking at a document, I'm sorry, it just.
I gotta read, I can't.
Yeah, so we'll definitely get that too. 'Cause
Perfect,
it's-
thank you.
You bet. It's really interesting to see people's comments, and people leave for all kinds of reasons. Lots of personal reasons, lots of retirements. About 8 or so folks who are resigning in lieu of termination. So people move for all kinds of reasons, right? The big picture, though, I think is positive for us. Less resignations, less people leaving, more quickly filling the jobs, seeing people from other places wanting to be here. So, yeah, we made some good moves.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you. Okay, next, we have discussion items. Discussion item A, 2023-2024 Fort Morgan Middle School Handbook. I think we have the changes in there that we wanted to see. Any other discussion about that?
No, I appreciate that, listening to that concern and the accommodation. Thank you.
Very quickly taken care of.
Thank you.
Okay, so policies, third reading, that would be those nutrition policies that we have to make the changes on that are going to be moot point, but we still have to, and we will be voting on those. So any other questions about those? Any discussion?
They were also provided to Ashley in this, what you're seeing, and she approved them.
Cool, good deal. Okay, then we have policies for second reading, but we are going to pull that first one, GBEA, because we're going to talk more about that at our upcoming work session, whenever that might be, and we have some ideas about it, I think. So we'll discuss that more when we can be a little more casual about it. But then we also have for second reading KEC, KEF, and KEF-E. Any discussion about that?
No, I agree with those changes.
I-
Say that.
Agreed.
Okay, next up, discussion item D, which is about the CEA resolution, which our FMEA talked to us about. Apparently Rob found that on the web.
I didn't know. What do you turn on Siri for? Come on.
I didn't turn her on. Okay, we have here in our agenda the proposed resolution, but what actually passed from the CEA reads, the CEA believes that capitalism inherently exploits children, public schools, land, labor, and resources. Capitalism is in opposition to fully addressing systemic racism, the school-to-prison pipeline, climate change, patriarchy, gender and LGBTQ disparities, education inequality, and income inequality. So that is how the CEA resolution reads. We also have in front of us the Brush Board's resolution. I think that our discussion here is to decide if we're going to do anything about this. I think that we have three different options from what I can gather. One is that as a board, we can decide to support the CEA resolution. We can decide to do something like Brush and somewhat oppose the CEA resolution. Or I think our third option is to drop the matter at this point in time. Is there any discussion from anyone on the board? Anyone want to tell us their thoughts?
Well, my opinion, I don't even know really why we're discussing it. We don't have to respond to anything CEA does. CEA by definition is kind of a political entity. I mean, it's the labor association, so they're going to be political by nature. We are not political by nature. We're a nonpartisan group of elected officials, so I think our tactic is to ignore that. I mean, whether you agree with that or don't agree with that, agree with parts of it or not don't agree with parts of it, I mean, to me, it's a dumb resolution, and I don't think it's worthy of our attention, to be honest.
And I think FMEA stating how they feel about it is where it needs to stay. So
I appreciate you, Melissa, looking at what the actual language was, because when I saw proposed, I thought, well, this is, I won't use the word it has in my mind, but a half whatever, because
Baked.
baked idea here, what was proposed. I've been to enough delegate assemblies, whether it's whatever this or that, to know that amendments are made and there's what usually is proposed is changed over the time. So to me, it was convoluted from the get-go. And as Rob said, it's a political entity. It has nothing to do with what we do. We take care of children and our business of educating, and I think this is a moot point, and unfortunately, I don't believe it should have been on our table.
Chris, anything you would like to add?
No, I just agree. I think we need to let it go.
Do we have sound from Amy? Did we get her?
Not yet, we haven't.
Okay.
We don't have anything.
No emails or anything from you? Okay.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's
Very,
interesting.
very curious.
No text messages.
My thought process was like almost exactly what FMEA brought to us, only they worded it like so much better
It was worded much better
than what I was
had in my
thinking.
head, so.
But, yeah, I agree. Our business is to educate. This is not something that we need to really focus on. To me, this is done deal right now. Not another dime of time on it. Consensus is with me, so I think this board is done talking about the CEA resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have consent agenda. Oh, and by the way, we would love to have you stay and maybe have cake. We're not going to be that much longer in our meeting, so you're welcome to stay. Next up, we have personnel action report. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown?
Aye.
Rob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham? Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
Melissa Smith?
Aye. Okay, next are action items. Action item A, 2023-2024 Fort Morgan Middle School Handbook. Pleasure of the board.
Move to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown?
Aye.
Rob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham? Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
Melissa Smith?
Aye. Action item B, policies for third reading. We have EF, EF-E-1, EF-E-2, E-2. It's getting weird. Policy EFC, policy EFEA, policy EFEA-E. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown?
Aye.
Rob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham? Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
Sean Proudy? Oh, Melissa Smith?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aye. Next up, we have action item C, appropriating resolution to adopt the 2023-2024 budget. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown?
Aye.
Rob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham? Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
Melissa Smith?
Aye. Action item D, resolution to approve spending the funds from the beginning fund balance. Pleasure of the board.
Move to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown?
Aye.
Rob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham? Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
Melissa Smith?
Aye. Action item E, resolution to establish authorized signers for Fort Morgan High School scholarship and impress accounts at Bank of Colorado. Pleasure of the board.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown?
Aye.
Rob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham? Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
Melissa Smith?
Aye. Action item F, resolution to add BOK Financial as the registrar and paying agent for the district's bonds, replacing Wells Fargo. Pleasure of the board.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown?
Aye.
Rob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham? Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
Melissa Smith?
Aye. Action item G, custodial agreement to appoint BOK Financial as registrar and paying agent for the district's bonds.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown?
Aye.
Rob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham? Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
Melissa Smith?
Aye. Action item H, registrar and paying agent agreement with BOK Financial. Pleasure of the board.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown?
Aye.
Rob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham? Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
Melissa Smith?
Aye. Was that G?
That was H.
Okay.
I.
I forgot to, okay. Action item I, 2023-2024 course description and planning guide for Lincoln High School. Pleasure of the board.
Move to approve?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown?
Aye.
Rob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham? Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
Melissa Smits?
Aye. All right, advanced planning. The next scheduled Board of Education meeting is July 17th, 2023. Maybe we'll have a retreat before that,
Maybe.
but we'll find out.
And I guess this might not be a very popular thing, but I don't think Amy should be reflected as attendance in our meetings because we've not, even though she may have zoomed in, we've not heard any responses. I'm not sure we really connected. So I don't think technically we should be counting her as an attendance. Because she's not.
Over 40 minutes. I think that we can check on
I will
things.
check on that.
Okay.
And see what's appropriate and what's not. All right, and if there is no further business before the board, we are adjourned, and let's go eat cake.
I love it.
Let them eat cake.
Let them eat cake.